My name's Madison Cole. I gave 8 years of my life serving this country, leading missions, commanding teams, earning my stripes through sweat and grit. But nothing prepared me for what my own family did to me that night. I never thought I'd be bleeding on Thanksgiving. But there I was, standing outside their picture-perfect colonial house in Connecticut, a cut on my lip, the icy wind slicing through my dress uniform. My father's words hit harder than any bullet. "Get out. You're not one of us." That slap? It didn't sting half as much as the silence that came after. My mother didn't say a word. My brother just stared at his plate. Even my little sister, who I'd always protected, stayed quiet. Here's the kicker. They were eating with silverware I bought, sipping wine I paid for, sitting in a house I'd quietly saved from foreclosure. But in their eyes, I was still just the failure who didn't belong. That night, something snapped. Not in me, but in the fragile threads I'd been holding together for them. One phone call after that slap, and everything they thought they controlled started to unravel. If you've ever felt underestimated by the people who should believe in you most, stick around. Before I dive into my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy family revenge stories. Now, let me tell you how it all started. I grew up in a family that looked perfect on the outside. We lived in Westport, Connecticut, the kind of place you'd see in a fancy magazine. The Coles had old money, strict rules, and a way of smiling that never felt real. My dad, Douglas, wasn't just a businessman. He was a big deal. He ran a powerful investment firm, all about looking important and keeping up appearances. When he talked, it was like he was giving a speech, and everyone had to listen, or at least act like they were. My mom, Evelyn, was a beauty queen back in the day, and she still acted like one. Everything in our house was like a scene from a play she directed. She made sure we all followed her script, and nothing happened unless she approved. Then there were my siblings. Logan was the perfect son my dad always wanted. He went to a top school, had a firm handshake, and walked like he was born to take over the family business. Right after college, Dad brought him into the firm. They'd golf, drink bourbon, and talk like they already owned everything. Logan played his part perfectly. Cool, sharp, always in control. Chloe, the youngest, was Mom's pride and joy. She was a star on social media before she could even vote. Mom raised her to be a picture of elegance. Pageants, pretty dresses, and a soft voice that never said too much. Chloe learned quick how to fit in. And then there was me, the middle kid, the one who didn't belong. I was different from the start. While Logan studied business and Chloe won beauty contests, I was in the garage taking apart old computers and teaching myself how to code. I didn't care about fancy parties or dressing up. I wanted to build things that made a difference. Things that could help people or change the world. When I told my family I was applying to West Point, it was like I'd said something crazy. We were at Sunday brunch, and my dad looked at me like I'd lost my mind. My mom dropped her spoon into her tea. Logan just smirked, and Chloe stared like she didn't understand. "You're a Cole," my dad said. "We don't take orders, we give them." The silence after that was heavy. They thought I was letting them down, embarrassing the family name. I didn't care. I wanted a life with meaning, a chance to serve something bigger than our family's fancy lifestyle. Deep down, though, I hoped they'd come around. Maybe they'd be proud of me for choosing my own path. They weren't. Instead, they told relatives I was taking a year off to figure things out. My mom even hid my West Point acceptance letter in a drawer. When I asked why, she said she didn't want the neighbors talking. That's when I learned the Cole family rule. Image is everything. If you don't fit the picture, you're as good as invisible. West Point didn't just shape me. It made me who I am. The discipline, the tough training, the constant pressure. It was hard, but I loved it. While some cadets struggled, I found something I'd never had before. Purpose. Every day meant something. Every task mattered. Nobody cared about your last name or how much money your family had. They cared if you could lead, if you could keep going when things got tough, if you could think straight when everything went wrong. I graduated near the top of my class and became a second lieutenant. My parents didn't come to the ceremony. They sent peonies with a blue ribbon that didn't even match my uniform. No note, no nothing. After that, I worked in cyber operations, protecting military systems, spotting threats, and stopping hackers before they could do damage. It wasn't flashy, but it saved lives, quietly, every day. I moved up to captain, then major. I led a small, tight-knit team. We worked with intelligence units, stopped ransomware attacks on critical systems, and even teamed up with NATO allies for big international drills. I trained soldiers, ran missions, and earned the trust of people who'd seen the worst of war. But to my family, I was still just Madison playing soldier. I called my dad once, still in my dusty fatigues after a mission where I helped stop a major cyber threat. I told him I got a commendation. He didn't ask about it. He just said, "So when are you going to quit that and start your real life?" Real life. Like what I was doing didn't count. Logan had just become a vice president at Dad's company. Chloe was building her own skincare brand. Me? I was serving my country, watching from a distance as my family shared photos from fancy parties, never mentioning me. Still, I sent them things. A security system for the house. Money for Chloe's college fund when she almost lost her scholarship. I didn't sign my name, but they knew it was me. They never said thanks. When I was medically retired at 28 after a spinal injury from a rough flight, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me. I'd served my country, earned my rank, done something meaningful. Maybe they'd say, "We're proud." But when I came home in my dress uniform for the first time in years, they barely looked at me. My mom said, "You've lost weight, dear. Try smiling more." My dad patted my shoulder and asked, "So what's next? Teaching gym at a military school?" That's when it hit me. In their eyes, I hadn't made it. I hadn't done it their way, so it didn't count. That night, I sat in my old bedroom. It was empty, repainted, like I'd never been there. And I realized something. No matter what I did out in the world, in that house, I'd always be the daughter who didn't fit. Getting back to civilian life was tough, but I'd been through worse. While others struggled to find work after leaving the military, I had a plan. In the Army, I'd built and tested cybersecurity systems that stopped foreign hackers from stealing sensitive data. I knew what worked and what didn't. So I did something a Cole wasn't supposed to do. I started over. My partner was Noah Kim, an old Army friend with a sharp mind and a dry sense of humor that kept me grounded. We set up shop in a tiny studio above a laundromat in South Boston. The walls were thin, the pipes were loud, and we had no money. But we had an idea. A smart, AI-powered firewall for government and business systems. Fast, strong, unbreakable. We called it Iron Wall. We lived on coffee and cheap noodles, working with the same discipline we'd learned in the military. We coded all night, pitched to anyone who'd listen, got turned down, tweaked our work, and tried again. Slowly, things started to click. A veteran-owned law firm signed on, then a hospital network. Then, out of nowhere, a city council on the West Coast. We were gaining traction. Investors started calling. Real money came in. We weren't just getting by. We were building something that mattered. But to my family, I was still the letdown. I sent a quick update about Iron Wall in our family group chat. My dad replied, "Cybersecurity? Sounds small time." Logan called it a cute hobby. My mom didn't even respond. Chloe sent a gif of someone slow clapping. I couldn't tell if she was mocking me or not. Probably mocking. They kept trying to fix me. Dad offered to hook me up with a guy in finance for a real job at his firm, like my work didn't count. He called it a second chance. My mom mailed me an invite to a fancy charity event at the yacht club, telling me to dress properly, and even sent a picture of a dress she thought would soften me up. I was building a company from nothing, creating tech that could protect thousands of people, and all they cared about was how I'd look at a cocktail party. One day, I came home to find my dad in my apartment, uninvited. I was in sweatpants, hair in a messy bun, surrounded by cables and code. He looked around and said, "So this is where you're wasting away." Wasting away. That's what he called it. I still wanted to make him proud. I showed him Iron Wall, walked him through a demo, explained how it stopped a hacker from breaking into a hospital's pediatric unit in under 3 seconds. He nodded, stood up, fixed his jacket, and said, "Not bad, but it's not a big stock market deal." That hit me hard. He'd never really see me. I wasn't Logan. I didn't follow their rules, dress their way, or play their game. I chose meaning over show, service over fame. To them, that made me a failure. I kept helping them anyway. I paid off Chloe's last tuition bill when she flunked a semester abroad. I quietly donated to my mom's women's foundation when it almost went under. I even fixed the security on my dad's company server after I found malware, without telling him. I got nothing in return. Not a single thank you. They didn't want my help. They wanted me gone. But that Thanksgiving, when that slap happened, that was the moment I finally stopped trying. Looking back, I should have known things would eventually break. You can only take so much before it all comes crashing down. It started with small jabs they disguised as care. My dad once gave me a self-help book called Women Who Settled Too Little and said it made him think of me. Logan sent me an article about lonely single women with a winking emoji. My mom posted a family picture on Instagram, captioning it, "So proud of my 2 shining stars." I wasn't in the photo. I was the one holding the camera. They treated me like an outsider, someone they put up with but never really wanted. Even Chloe, who used to cry in my arms after her first heartbreak, started calling me intense if I said something they didn't like. I stayed quiet. Kept it all inside. Until I couldn't anymore. It was Logan's engagement dinner, a big, fancy event on a rooftop in Manhattan. Everything was perfect. White and gold, like a magazine spread. I showed up in a plain black jumpsuit and boots, my hair pulled back tight, military style. Chloe looked me over and said, "Can you try not to scare everyone?" At the dinner, Logan gave a toast about building a future on family values. My dad grinned like it was his moment. My mom dabbed her eyes with a fancy handkerchief. Then Logan raised his glass to me and said, "To Madison, our rebel, who shows us all what not to do." Everyone laughed. It was quick and uncomfortable, but it cut deep. I bit my tongue, my stomach turning. Then I stood up. I didn't yell or make a scene. I just looked at them and spoke calmly. "The only reason your company's still standing," I said to my dad, "is because I fixed a security breach you didn't even know about. If I'd reported it, you'd have lost everything to fines." My mom whispered, "Madison, please." I turned to Logan. "That engagement ring? You paid for it with a bonus from a deal I caught and cleaned up before it hit the news. You're welcome." Then I walked out. No drama, no tears, just the truth. After that, something in me changed. It wasn't anger. It was understanding. I'd spent my whole life chasing love from people who only cared about control, not honesty or loyalty. They only respected power. So I gave them what they respected. I threw myself into Iron Wall. We landed a huge defense contract after stopping a hack at an energy plant. We grew, hired veterans, gave scholarships to daughters of fallen soldiers. I built something real, something that mattered. But at home, the texts stopped. The family chat went quiet. I wasn't invited to Logan's wedding. My mom sent a late, happy birthday email with a generic card attached. I didn't feel invisible anymore, though. I felt free. Still, I wasn't ready for what happened that Thanksgiving. I didn't see the slap coming, or what it would set off inside me. I'd been pushed aside my whole life. But after that night, I was done being ignored. I didn't show up to that Thanksgiving dinner looking for peace. I wasn't there to pick a fight either. Deep down, in a part of me I didn't like admitting existed, I still hoped they'd see me. Not the soldier, not the businesswoman, not the odd one out. Just Madison, their daughter, their sister. I wore my dress uniform that night, not to show off or stir trouble. It was just tradition. Grandpa Cole always wore his service dress on holidays, and Dad used to do the same with his Air Force uniform. I had mine cleaned, polished the buttons, and ironed it twice to get it just right. The house looked the same as always: white columns, holiday lights on the porch, a fancy brass wreath that probably cost more than my old car. It was perfect, like a postcard. Until the door opened. Logan was there, smirking. Going all out with the military look, huh? Kind of over the top, don't you think? I held my tongue and walked inside. The smell of turkey, rosemary, and something sweet hit me. Chloe was at the table, sipping wine, glued to her phone. Mom was bossing the staff around like she was directing a play. Dad didn't even look up from the fireplace. Dinner started like every other Cole family event. Toasts, sly digs, bragging dressed up as small talk. Then Logan's fiancée, Camille, picture perfect with a polished smile, looked at me and said, "So, Madison, still playing soldier? Or have you moved on to something real?" The table went quiet. I forced a smile. "I run a cybersecurity company now. Just signed our third federal contract." Camille blinked. "Oh, that's specific." Logan laughed. "Bet it's fun bossing around interns instead of soldiers." I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my cool. "We stopped a hack on a children's hospital 2 weeks ago. It's been a solid quarter." That's when Dad set his fork down. "You know your problem, Madison?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You always act like you're smarter than everyone else." I stared at him, shocked. "I'm not here to compete, Dad." "Then why the uniform? Why the war stories? Why the attitude?" Mom squirmed. "Let's just eat." But Dad stood up. "You want respect? Earn it. Not with contracts or medals. Earn it by being part of this family instead of acting like you're above us." I stood too, shaking. I paid the property taxes on this house for 3 years. Quietly. When your company tanked in 2019, I sent the anonymous loan to save it. I never asked for thanks. But don't tell me I haven't earned my place here. Then it happened. He slapped me. Hard. The sound echoed like a firecracker. Everyone froze. Chloe's wine glass hit the floor. As if that wasn't enough, he grabbed my arm, dragged me to the door, and flung it open. "You don't belong here," he growled. "You never did." He pushed me out onto the porch. I stumbled down the steps, my heels slipping on the cold stone. My lip was bleeding, my heart pounding. I looked back, but no one came after me. Not Mom, not Logan, not even Chloe. Just the door slamming shut. A neighbor across the street stood by his trash bins, staring. I saw him mouth, "You okay?" I shook my head and walked to my car. In that moment, I wasn't their daughter or sister. I wasn't even a person to them. I was just something they wanted gone, but they messed up. They forgot who I was and what I could do. I sat in my car for what felt like forever. The engine was off, the inside dark, my breath clouding up the windshield in quick, sharp puffs. Blood dripped from my lip, staining my uniform right over the ribbon bar, the one I got in Kandahar for pulling 2 injured soldiers from a burning truck. My hands were steady, but my heart? It was a storm of silence. They didn't just shame me, they wiped me out. And for a second, just a second, I bought it. I thought maybe they were right, that I wasn't enough, that my uniform, my company, all the sacrifices I'd made were nothing to them because I didn't fit their perfect image. But then something shifted. Something hard and cold settled inside me. I grabbed my backup phone from the glove box. Not the one for Iron Wall, but the one I kept for old contacts. I scrolled to a name I hadn't called in over a year. Major Serena Hayes, now a big shot in cybersecurity at the Department of Defense. She answered on the second ring. "Madison?" Her voice was warm but sharp, like she could tell something was up. I didn't waste time with small talk. "I've got a data trail you need to see," I said. "Private company. They're skimming money through third-party vendors and leaking sensitive info because of sloppy practices. It's a mess." "Names?" she asked. I hesitated, then said, "Cole and Langston Industries." A pause. Madison, that's your family. Not anymore, I said. I sent her the encrypted folder from my offline drive. Records of shady transactions, offshore accounts tied to fake companies, even an audio clip of my dad saying, "We'll clean up the back end after the sale. The clients won't notice." Serena didn't ask how I got it. She knew better. After a long silence, she said, "You know what this will start?" "I'm not asking for favors," I told her. "I want it done clean. Quiet. No media circus. Just follow the evidence." "Got it," she said. Then softer, "You okay?" I stared out the windshield at the warm glow of their porch light across the street. "I was," I said, "until tonight." We hung up. That was it. No big speech, no threats, no tears. Just a call. A spark. A crack in the perfect world they thought they'd built. I leaned back in my seat and breathed out slowly. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry. I was focused. This wasn't about getting even. It was about the truth. About letting the people who preached family values face the world without the daughter they threw away, and the secrets she'd kept to protect them. Now, the fight was on. There's a kind of storm you don't see coming. It doesn't hit with a big crash. It starts quiet, like a shift in the air you barely notice. That's what was happening to the Cole family. They had no clue. They didn't know the Department of Defense was looking into some shady money transfers tied to Cole and Langston. They didn't notice when an audit request landed on their compliance officer's desk. They didn't even blink when their biggest government contract got put on hold for review. They still thought they were unstoppable. 3 days after that slap, Logan posted a picture of a shiny new Rolex on Instagram, captioning it, "Legacy isn't given, it's earned." I almost laughed. He didn't know the money for that watch was already being traced. Camille, his fiancée, was busy planning their fancy wedding, pinning pictures of flowers and gold-trimmed invitations. She had no idea the investors paying for it were starting to back out. My mom kept working on her big charity gala for the Cole Women's Initiative, smiling for cameras like everything was perfect. I wondered how long it'd take for the ethics probe news to hit her donors. And my dad? He was still sitting in his fancy office, sipping brandy, acting like he ruled the world. He didn't see that his whole empire was starting to crack. That's the thing about lies. They don't hold up. They fall apart slow at first, then all at once. Serena sent me short updates. No names, no specifics. We both knew how to keep things quiet. One text said, "Review's gone federal." Another, "Whistleblowers solid, subpoenas coming." Then, "2 clients bailed, more on the way." Each message felt like a pulse, like the ground shifting under a house nobody knew was falling. I didn't feel happy about it. I felt steady, cold maybe. You'd think I'd want to gloat, to cheer as they stumbled. But it wasn't about that. It was about knowing I wasn't wrong. I wasn't the problem. I wasn't weak for walking away. I saw the truth when they didn't, and now the world was catching up. I stayed quiet. Didn't post anything. Didn't talk to the press. Didn't even tell my closest friends. Silence. Real, purposeful silence. Hit harder than any loud fight. That silence got to them. Logan called once. I didn't pick up. Chloe sent a message asking, "Did you do something?" I didn't reply. I just watched as the web they'd spun for years started to choke them. One day I was in a meeting with a federal contractor. He leaned in and said, "We used to work with Cole and Langston, but something felt off. Then your company came along. Good timing, huh?" I just smiled. Sometimes timing's everything. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back my story. For years, they'd labeled me the failure, the odd one, the girl who didn't fit. Now, without saying a word, I was changing that story. They built their world without me. Now they'd watch it crumble piece by piece. And they still didn't know who was holding the hammer. The first sign of trouble didn't come from the government. It was a small article in the local paper, tucked away on page 6. Whistleblower investigation targets prominent Connecticut family firm. No names, no specifics, but enough to get people talking. By the end of the week, the whispers grew louder. Board members at Cole and Langston started to panic. Two quit quietly. Another put out a vague statement about personal values not matching the company's path anymore. Then a reporter dug deeper and found out the SEC was looking into things. That was all it took. Suddenly, local blogs, business emails, and LinkedIn posts were buzzing with questions about what was going on. And my family? They kept pretending everything was fine. My mom went to her gala in a fancy cream dress, sparkling with diamonds, acting like nothing was wrong. She gave a speech about empowering women while ignoring the daughter she'd pushed away. But the sponsors noticed. One pulled out the next day. Another demanded their logo come off the website. Logan and Camille's wedding plans hit a snag. Their planner sent a note about reputational concerns. The venue, a big historic estate, canceled, saying it was about brand risk. Camille posted a tearful selfie to her 18,000 followers, writing, "Some people are so jealous they destroy what they can't have." I didn't like the spotlight. I didn't want the mess, but I didn't stop it either. For once, the truth was louder than their perfect image. Chloe texted me again, direct this time. "Did you do this?" she asked. "The investigation, the audits, all of it. It's like a curse." I stared at her message for a bit before answering. "I didn't start the curse," I wrote. "I just stopped hiding the symptoms." She didn't reply. My dad stayed quiet through it all. No statement, no apology. Not even a hint he knew what was happening. He acted like ignoring it would make it go away. But I knew better. When federal investigators showed up, it wasn't with flashing lights or big headlines, just quiet badges and sealed papers. That's when the silence broke. Neighbors started whispering. The PTA moms talked in hushed tones. Mom's Bridge group canceled their games, for now. Even the golf club put Logan's membership application on hold. The Cole name used to open doors. Now it was a weight dragging them down. And they still didn't get it. It wasn't the government that brought this on. It wasn't a rival or some angry former worker. It was me. The daughter they pushed out into the cold. I'd held back for years, not because I was weak, but because I still cared. When that care broke, so did their world. This wasn't just a public scandal. It was the slow, ugly collapse of a family built on lies, control, and appearances. For the first time, they had to face themselves. And they didn't like what they saw. It was a Tuesday morning. I was eating a protein bar, going over some breach simulations Serena sent me, when the TV caught my attention. The newscaster's voice changed, just enough to make me look up. Sources confirm that former U.S. Army Captain Madison Cole, now CEO of Apex Cybertech, may have provided internal documents tied to the federal investigation against Cole and Langston. My hands stopped moving. My ears started ringing like I was too close to a blast. For a second, I thought I misheard. Then my old Army photo flashed on the screen. Uniform sharp, ribbons in place, face set like I was ready for a fight. But this wasn't a salute. This was a setup. Sources suggest a family dispute may have driven her cooperation with investigators. The reporter went on. I leaned back, breathing hard through my teeth. So this was their move. Make it personal. Make it ugly. Paint me as the angry daughter out for revenge. Here's the thing. I didn't leak anything. I didn't have to. The truth was coming out on its own. But someone had tipped off the media, trying to turn the spotlight on me. I had a pretty good guess who. That same day, Logan posted on LinkedIn. Sometimes those closest to us cause the most hurt. Praying for truth and healing in these tough times. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just throwing me under the bus. He was the one behind the wheel. I was ready for the reporters, the gossip, the noise. What I wasn't ready for was the silence from the people who should have known better. Nobody from the Cole and Langston board called. My mom didn't reach out. Not even Chloe. The messages that did come were rough. One random comment online said, "Another bitter vet acting entitled." Another, Funny how she only did the right thing after getting rich. And one more. Of course it's a woman, always tearing down her family to feel big. I knew I shouldn't read them, but I did. Every word cut deep. Part of me kept hoping someone would say, "That's not Madison." Nobody did. That night, I stood in my apartment, lights off, the city glowing outside like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. My whole career, I'd worked quietly, letting my actions speak louder than my pain. Now my name was in headlines, but they weren't telling my story. They were telling my father's. The man who slapped me and dragged me out of his house was now the poor victim of a daughter holding a grudge. It was almost laughable, if it wasn't so disgusting. But something in me clicked. I was done waiting for the truth to come out on its own. I wasn't going to beg for people to see me. I was going to make them see. Clear, loud, and on my terms. 2 days after the media storm hit, my dad stood at a podium with the Cole and Langston logo behind him, 2 nervous PR agents at his side. The room was packed with local reporters, business writers, and even some big-name finance journalists sniffing out a story. I watched it live from my office, arms crossed, jaw tight. He wore his favorite gray suit, the one he saved for charity events, to look like a good guy, his Yale ring catching the light just right. He started speaking, calm and confident, like he was addressing a boardroom. "Thank you all for being here today." He talked about tough times and company changes, tossing out buzzwords like internal shifts and family misunderstandings. Then he said my name. "Many of you have heard about my eldest daughter, Madison Cole." My throat went dry. He paused, letting the camera zoom in on his face. "Madison served our country with courage, and we're proud of her service. But recently, she's made choices that have hurt our family and our company deeply." I could almost hear the headlines being written. He kept going. "Out of respect, we've stayed quiet. But the recent leaks, some with private or misleading information, have caused unfair rumors. Let me be clear, Cole and Langston has done nothing wrong." Then he leaned forward, voice soft, like he was sharing a sad secret. "We believe Madison's actions come from personal pain, hurts we didn't know about, and we hope she finds peace." My hands shook, not from anger, but from how precise it was. This wasn't just dodging blame, it was a calculated attack on who I was. He made me sound unstable, emotional, broken, a daughter throwing a tantrum, not a woman standing up for what's right. And it worked. By morning, the headlines had shifted. Military vet versus family empire, a personal feud? Madison Cole, revenge or justice? We pray she finds healing, says father of cyber CEO. Even people I trusted started to pull back. Investors called my COO, asking if I was emotionally stable. A podcast I was set to do canceled quietly. An executive I'd mentored unfollowed me on LinkedIn. My dad didn't slap me this time. He didn't need to. His words hit harder, but something else happened too. Buried in the noise, on comment threads, in private messages, a different voice started to grow. People who'd been silenced before. Former employees, women in tech. Veterans labeled as too emotional. They started reaching out. "Thank you for speaking up." They tried to break me too. "If you keep fighting, I'm with you." That's when I realized something. My dad might have the stage, but he didn't own the conversation. And I was just getting started. There was one person I thought might still be on my side. Chloe, my little sister. She used to sneak into my room when Dad's yelling got too loud. I taught her how to swim, ride a bike, braid her hair tight for cheer practice. When I left for boot camp, she cried and swore she'd always have my back. After everything, the press conference, the headlines, she was the only family I hadn't completely shut out. Part of me still hoped she'd see me for who I was. So when her name lit up my phone that night, my heart jumped. Maybe someone was finally going to say, "I know they're lying. I know you." I answered, "Chloe?" A pause. Then a sigh. "Madison," she said, and it already felt like she was pulling away. She said she was calling out of love. that Dad was hurting, that Logan was stressed, that she wished I hadn't made it public. Made it public? I almost dropped the phone. I didn't leak anything, I said, teeth gritted. They pinned it on me to save themselves. She went quiet. I know, but maybe you should just stop. Let it go. We're family. That word, family, hit like a slap. They always used it to guilt you into staying quiet. Do you even believe me? I asked. She didn't answer. That silence said more than any words could. Then she said, "They're still our parents." My breath caught. Not my parents. Not after everything. Are you calling because you miss me or because they told you to? I said, my voice breaking. If this is about cleaning up their mess, Chloe, don't bother. I'm calling because I don't want you to destroy everything, she whispered, including yourself. And that was it. I knew she was gone. Not gone like dead. Worse. She'd chosen them. I hung up. No yelling, no slamming the phone down. Just ended the call. I sat on my kitchen floor for a long time after that, back against the cabinets, eyes stinging, arms around my knees like I was a scared teenager hiding from Dad's anger again. I wasn't that girl anymore, but for a moment I felt like her. Alone. Invisible. Unwanted. I'd faced gunfire in Afghanistan. I'd worked through hacked systems at midnight with nothing but a flashlight and a racing mind. But this betrayal, cut deeper than anything. Chloe was my last ally. Now, I had no one left to stand with me. But then it hit me. Maybe I didn't need anyone to stand with me. Maybe it was time to stop hiding behind a shield and start swinging a sword. I wasn't going to speak out. Not in public. My plan was to let the investigations do the talking. Let the facts come out the way they always did in my work. Clear, hard, impossible to argue with. But when Chloe turned her back on me, when my dad's lies played on repeat across every news channel, when strangers who didn't know me decided I was either a saint or a villain, something inside me clicked. I didn't need their permission to tell my story. I didn't need their version of me. I had my own. That night, I sat in my apartment, opened my laptop, turned on the camera. No makeup, no fancy setup, just me in a hoodie, my voice raw and real. My name is Madison Cole. I started. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I served 8 years, led missions in 3 countries, buried friends who never came home. I didn't leak anything. But if I had, would you blame the fire alarm for waking you up before the house burns down? I didn't just lay out the facts. I told the truth. I talked about families like mine, where silence is a rule and daughters learn to smile through shame. I talked about the pressure to look perfect while hiding pain behind closed doors. I spoke for every woman told to keep quiet, every soldier whose service was brushed off like a hobby, every daughter erased when she stopped being useful. Yes, I built Apex Cybertech from nothing, I said. Yes, I made more in 5 years than they did in 20. But this isn't about money. It's about truth. And truth doesn't need anyone's approval to stand. I paused before the last part, knowing it could break me or set me free. My father slapped me across the face on Thanksgiving, in front of my mother, my siblings, and none of them said a word. The video was 4 minutes and 27 seconds long. I didn't share it widely or add a dramatic caption. Just 3 words. This is mine. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed. By morning, it had 1.2 million views. By noon, the Madison Cole was trending worldwide. By evening, journalists were calling my assistant for interviews I hadn't agreed to. But the comments meant more than the headlines. Thousands poured in. She said what I've been too scared to say. Finally, someone with proof. I don't know her, but I believe her. Then things shifted for real. 2 former Cole and Langston board members quit publicly. A woman in cybersecurity shared my video, writing, "Madison was in rooms I wasn't allowed in. She deserves to be heard." The one that hit me hardest? A message from a soldier I hadn't talked to in years. "Captain Cole, I saw your video. We trusted you in the field. We still do. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. It wasn't over. But the silence? That was done. I thought I'd left my military days behind when I turned in my resignation. No more 5 a.m. briefings, no more brass breathing down my neck, no more proving I deserved my rank just because I was the only woman in the room. That part of my life was supposed to be over, but it came knocking. Literally. 2 days after my video blew up online, my apartment buzzer went off. I checked the intercom. Special Agent Lena Vargas, Department of Defense. A calm voice said, "We'd like to talk." My stomach sank. For a split second, I thought they were coming to pin some leak on me. But when I opened the door, I didn't see anger. I saw respect. Vargas was tall, dressed sharp in black civilian clothes, hair in a tight bun, badge on her blazer. Next to her stood a man in full army dress uniform, ribbons across his chest, eagle insignia on his shoulder. A major general. I knew him. General Reed. We'd met twice on duty, once in Qatar, once during a classified drill off the Gulf. You didn't forget a face like his. He only noticed you if you'd done something worth noticing. "Miss Cole," he said with a nod. I straightened up on instinct. "Sir." He gave a small smile. "We're not here to question you. We're here because the department wants to know how someone like you ended up in the middle of a corporate political mess." "I didn't choose this," I said. "No, you didn't," he replied. "But you handled it like you were still in uniform." They sat down in my living room. Vargas pulled out a thick folder stamped confidential and opened it. Inside were transcripts, screenshots, and video clips I'd never seen. My dad's business partners whispering at private events, emails from PR firms trying to smear me, even records of Cole and Langston sniffing around Apex Cybertech's early contracts before they lost interest. "You weren't just pushed out," Vargas said. "You were targeted, carefully, quietly, like an enemy operation." I stared at the papers, feeling numb. "You were a threat to their world, Madison," she went on. "You had authority, resources, a reputation they couldn't control. They couldn't buy you, so they tried to erase you." General Reed leaned in. "And that makes you valuable." "Valuable?" I repeated. He nodded. "You know both worlds. Military discipline and civilian chaos. You built a company from nothing and survived sabotage from your own family. That makes you one of a kind." I blinked. "So what? The Army wants me back?" "Not in uniform," he said. "We're putting together a cybersecurity task force, linking the Pentagon with top civilian firms. You'd be independent, respected, backed." I let out a dry laugh. "My family tried to destroy me, and now the Army wants to hire me?" "Poetic, isn't it?" Vargas said with a smile. "But also," Reed added, "it's justice." I didn't say yes or no that day. When they left, they gave me a card. On the back, General Reed had written, "We never forgot who you were, Madison. Now it's time the world knows too." For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a discarded daughter. I felt like a soldier again. It started small. A name dropped from a press release. A no comment from someone who used to talk big. Then came the silences, louder than any denial. I knew it then. The system was starting to shake. My dad had always run things like a king behind closed doors. He didn't shout orders. He whispered them to judges, donors, board members. His power came from what people did for him without being told. But power like that only lasts as long as the reputation holding it up. My video? It broke that wide open. The first sign of trouble came from Cole and Langston's boardroom. Someone leaked a recording of an emergency meeting to the press. You could hear the panic in their voices. "We can't keep covering for him. He lied on TV. The public trusts her, not us. She's not just some angry daughter. She's a war hero with the feds behind her." I didn't leak it. I didn't even know who did. But it didn't matter. By the time it hit Twitter, every major journalist had it. Then came a bigger hit. A former prosecutor, one who'd brushed off a bribery claim against my dad years ago, stepped down from her job and posted on her blog. "I was wrong to trust Mr. Cole's image," she wrote. "It was a serious mistake." That post spread like wildfire. Suddenly, people who'd called my dad honest started backing away. Investors pulled their money. His old allies unfollowed him on LinkedIn like it was a curse. A local university even sent back a donation he'd made, making a big show of it. And then there was Chloe, my little sister. I hadn't heard from her since Thanksgiving, when she stood by and watched me bleed, didn't say a word when Dad screamed at me. But 3 weeks after my video went out, she texted me, "Maddie, I'm sorry. I was scared. I still am. But I saw what they did to you. I saw the video. You were right. You've always been right. If you're willing, I want to talk. I'll testify if you need me to." I stared at her message for a long time. I didn't trust her. Not yet. But I could feel it. The silence was breaking. Once the cracks started, the whole wall was coming down. Even my dad's old law firm, the one that helped him hide shady deals, put out a statement. We're reviewing past relationships and starting an internal audit. In other words, they knew trouble was coming. Then the bank got involved. A federal contact called me. Someone had flagged suspicious account activity tied to Cole and Langston's shell companies. Possible tax evasion, embezzlement, money laundering, going back years. My dad's empire wasn't just falling apart. It was caving in. And the best part? I didn't do a thing. I didn't beg, didn't yell, didn't push. I just stood there and watched the machine he'd built collapse under its own lies. This wasn't revenge. It was gravity. And for once, it was pulling in my favor. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cheap floor cleaner. It was such an ordinary place for something that felt like a reckoning years in the making. This wasn't a criminal trial. Not yet. It was a public hearing. The Securities Commission was digging into Cole and Langston for possible fraud and shady meddling with federal contracts. But for me, it was bigger than that. It was the first time I'd faced my dad since he slapped me and dragged me out of the house. I wore my old dress uniform. Not to show off, but because I knew how it would hit him. When I walked into that courtroom, people noticed. It wasn't just the medals or the way I carried myself. It was the quiet that followed me. The kind that made people sit up straighter, hold their breath, and wait for what came next. He was already there, sitting at the defense table in his fancy gray suit, surrounded by lawyers with stacks of folders. He looked up, and for the first time, he didn't smirk. He flinched. The judge called the room to order. Names were read, and the testimonies started. An accountant from the firm admitted to irregular bookkeeping. A former PR manager said she was pushed to trash my company's reputation. A military procurement officer confirmed my dad had tried to sabotage my cybersecurity firm's bids using insider connections. But nothing hit like when I took the stand. I sat down, adjusted the microphone, and looked straight ahead. Not at him, but at the judge, the audience, the truth. "I'm not here to punish my father," I said. "I'm here to defend myself. My name, my service, my work." For too long, he decided who belonged in his world and who didn't. My voice stayed steady. In 2020, I saved his company from going under. I paid off a second mortgage he hid from his board. I covered my sister's tuition. I kept the receipts. And still I was called a failure, labeled unstable, kicked out of my own family. The room was dead quiet. My mistake wasn't trusting him. It was thinking family meant safety. It doesn't. Integrity does. I turned, finally, and looked him in the eyes. For a man so obsessed with legacy, you've already lost yours. He shifted in his chair. His lawyers started whispering like they were trying to put out a fire. The reporters leaned in, hungry for more. I stepped down. The judge didn't make a decision that day. It wasn't that kind of hearing. But the next morning, the headlines told the story. Veteran exposes family corruption in powerful testimony. From disgraced daughter to national whistleblower. Madison Cole takes down Empire of Lies. My dad? He slipped out the back door. No cameras, no cheers, just shadows. That courtroom wasn't the end of the fight, but it was where things shifted. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. I felt seen. I felt heard. And most of all, I felt free. 3 days after the hearing, my phone rang with an unknown number. It wasn't the usual calls I'd been getting. No reporters, no lawyers, no chancers looking for a story. I answered, and there was a quiet pause. Then a voice said, "Colonel Cole, it's been a long time." I froze. Only a handful of people ever called me that and meant it. "General Blackwell?" I asked. He chuckled. "Still sharp. I saw the hearing. Thought I'd call before the world catches up." General Malcolm Blackwell wasn't just any officer. He used to run Joint Cyber Command. Years ago in Kandahar, I pulled him out of a compromised base during an ambush that split our unit. I didn't know who he was at the time. I was just doing my job. He never forgot it. On that call, he said something that stopped me in my tracks. "I owe you my life. Now let me repay you with my name." And he did. The next morning, an op-ed ran on the front page of the Washington Tribune titled, "We Failed Madison Cole, and That Ends Now," signed by General Blackwell himself. He wrote about our mission in Kandahar, how I broke protocol to save wounded soldiers as the base fell apart, how I stayed back with the satellite system to secure encrypted files the Taliban wanted. He used words like courage and duty I'd never claimed for myself. "She never asked for recognition," he wrote. "She never made excuses. She did what needed doing. Now she's under attack, not by enemies, but by her own family. Those of us who served with her have to speak up." He ended with, "Madison Cole is the best of what this country produces. We should all be ashamed it took a scandal for the world to see it." The internet went wild. By noon, "Your Justice for Madison" was trending. Veterans from all branches shared their stories, tagging me with support. She led from the front. I served with her in Djibouti. She never backed down. She ate with the recruits during Ramadan, the only officer who did. Even journalists who doubted me started shifting their tone. New headlines popped up. "Decorated veteran gets the support she deserves." "General speaks out. Madison Cole's legacy stands strong." From outcast to icon, the power of one voice. Then came the big one. The Pentagon put out a statement. "Colonel Madison Cole served with distinction for 8 years. Her work in cybersecurity and field operations remains critical to national security. Any attempts to undermine her do not reflect the values or recognition of the Department of Defense." That statement hit harder than any courtroom ruling. It wasn't just about clearing my name. It was a message to my family, the media, everyone who tried to erase me. You don't get to decide someone's value just because you've got the loudest voice. Sometimes the truth echoes louder. That day, I didn't feel like a daughter anymore. Not rejected, not obedient, not even angry. I felt like a woman standing tall, backed by generals, surrounded by people who'd survived their own battles. And finally, truly heard. 3 months after the courtroom hearing, I stood on a brightly lit stage at the National Cyber Defense Summit in D.C., surrounded by government officials, defense contractors, and fellow veterans. Behind me, a screen flashed the headline, "Colonel Madison Cole, from family scandal to national leader in tech security." I didn't write that headline. I didn't have to. By then, my story had spread across every major news outlet. But that night wasn't about the drama. It was about what I did next. I'd just signed a multi-million-dollar federal contract to lead a classified cybersecurity project, one that would change how we protect critical systems. It was my company, my team, my code, everything they said I could never build. I did it. General Blackwell had put my name forward for a Presidential Medal of Service. I didn't know if I'd get it, but his nomination alone meant more than any crowd's applause. Other generals backed me too, quietly pushing for me to join the Department of Defense Advisory Council. My LinkedIn was flooded. Journalists who once focused on my family's scandal now wanted interviews about leadership and grit. College students sent me essays about my story. One girl wrote, "My dad said I couldn't do tech. Then I showed him you." That one made me smile, but nothing compared to a foggy morning in Arlington. I'd been asked to speak at a memorial for fallen cyber unit soldiers, people who worked in the shadows and died without fanfare. Standing at the podium, facing a marble wall carved with initials most would never know, I saw them. Rows of young cadets, eyes locked, shoulders straight. After my speech, a few approached me. A Latina second lieutenant looked me right in the eye and said, "They tried to erase you, but now we all know your name." That moment was everything. That's when I knew I wasn't just a survivor. I was a symbol, not of revenge, but of coming back, standing tall, rewriting the story they tried to force on me. That month, I started the Cole Initiative, a scholarship for veterans moving into tech. Over 500 people applied in just 2 weeks. I testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee about ethics and gender bias in private military contracting. This time, they didn't question me. They listened. They wrote down what I said. I bought a house. Not some cold mansion like my dad's, but one with big windows, warm lights, and a porch swing I'd always wanted as a kid. I invited Chloe. She came. When she walked in, she whispered, "It smells like you." We didn't talk about that night. We didn't need to. Her being there was enough. My mom sent a letter, no return address, just 4 words in blue ink. I watched everything. Sorry. I didn't write back. Some things can't be fixed, even by the truth. But I wasn't angry. For the first time, I felt whole. Not perfect, not untouched. Just real. Strong. Respected. They took everything from me, my home, my family, my name. And from the ashes, I built something better. I wasn't just a soldier or a daughter or a failure. I was Madison Cole, and the world finally knew it. My name was starting to show up in headlines and Senate hearings, but my father's was fading from the world he used to own. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, like a shadow creeping in. First, the board at his defense tech company pushed him out. No big scandal, just that his name had become a problem. They dressed it up as early retirement or strategic changes, but I saw through it. So did he. His face used to be everywhere. On awards, in newsletters, even splashed across university talks about innovative leadership. Now, his old PR team, the ones he paid a fortune to keep him in the spotlight, erased him from their website. I heard things from people who used to work with him. He tried to get back on a think tank panel. They said no. He reached out to his contacts at Homeland Security. Nobody wrote back. He took a swing at a journalist who quoted something he'd written. Lost the lawsuit. Then he came after me, claiming I defamed him. The court tossed it out without even blinking. I didn't have to fight him anymore. He was falling apart all by himself. One day, I drove by the country club where he used to hold court every Friday night. The valet didn't know who he was when he rolled up in his old luxury car. They asked for his name twice. He didn't renew his membership after that. His friends stopped calling. Or maybe he just stopped picking up. The hardest part to swallow? He was living in the same house I'd saved from foreclosure years ago. The house where I bled on the porch, where he dragged me out by my hair. Now it sat quiet, dusty, cold. A neighbor told me she saw him walking his dog at night, head down. She waved once, but he didn't wave back. Then I got a letter, not from him, from his lawyer. Said he was leaving town, moving somewhere quieter. Retirement in Vermont. It read, "No forwarding address." Word got around. A barista who used to work near his office said he'd come in, order coffee, pay in cash. Never talked, always looked over his shoulder. He wasn't scared. He was ashamed. And nobody was after him. He used to tell me silence was power, that the one who speaks last owns the story. But his silence wasn't power anymore. It was just empty. Even my little sister, who used to think he hung the moon, stopped saying his name. At Christmas, she raised a glass at my table and said, To chosen family. I didn't cry, but something inside me let go. I used to think revenge would feel like winning in court or seeing him locked up. But it wasn't that. It was me living my life, full and free, while he faded away. It was building something good without needing him in it. It was showing the world he didn't break me. He made me stronger. I didn't need him to admit what he'd done. The world had already judged him. And in that quiet judgment, his legacy disappeared. The man who thought his daughter didn't matter became the one nobody remembered. And me? I became someone they'll never forget. Here's my story, plain and simple. I was a daughter dragged out by her hair, cast aside by the people who should have had my back. But I didn't stay down. I became a veteran, a survivor, a leader. They thought I was just a broken soldier, someone they could wipe away. They were wrong. Every scar I carried turned into a piece of my comeback. Every time they tried to silence me, it only made my voice louder. In the end, I didn't just fight back. I built something new from the ashes and climbed higher than they ever thought I could. If you've ever been betrayed by the ones who were supposed to protect you, or felt shamed, silenced, or told you weren't enough, you get it. You know what it's like to stand up anyway. This isn't just about my revenge. It's for every woman who's had to carry her own justice. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to rebuild after betrayal? Drop your story in the comments. If this moved you, please take a second to like the video, subscribe to Hidden Family Revenge Stories, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. We're here to share the stories others want to keep buried. Until next time, stay strong, stay seen, and don't let anyone else write your ending.